Welcome to Right on the Mark with your host, Mark Young. Today's conversation is about summer vacations. Now that summer's coming to an end, it makes me reminisce a little about some of my childhood vacations leading up all the way to my adult vacations. It started out as being a young kid going on family vacations back in the 70s. Some of the vacations that we took consisted of beach vacations, lake vacations, some old town museum vacations, going to Williamsburg and things like that, amusement parks, Hershey vacations, things of that nature. But some of the most memorable times that we've had is probably beach vacations. I can remember growing up probably in my, 10, 11, 12 years old and going to the beach and just can't waiting for the day to get there. It's hard to sleep the night before because you're super excited, you're super pumped, and you're ready to go on vacation and you're trying to get everything together. And back in the day, sometimes my mom would drive and sometimes we would catch a bus to vacation. I remember probably my first vacation we took was 1972 Nags Head. We met our cousins down there and we had a blast. I was probably very young, but I do remember bits and pieces of it. Some things come to mind is we had a magician on the beach. So every day this magician would come out on the beach and he would do tricks and he would never give his secrets up. I remember being his assistant one time and I'm like, guy, you got to tell me how you do these tricks, especially the water coming out of the Pepsi bottle. For people that went with me down there, you'll know what I mean. We also played cards at the house. We had a beach house in Nags Head. We'd play Bloody Knuckles. We would eat a lot of food down there, crab cakes. We'd go crabbing, we'd go fishing. A lot of wrecked ships on the beach down there. I remember as a kid just going down and saying, what are all these ships on the beach doing? And they're shipwrecked. My aunt was a school teacher and she'd give me a whole history lesson on all the shipwrecked boats that were crash landed on the beach back then. I guess out the Outer Banks, they had the big lighthouse and the ships would guide their way through the night by looking at the lighthouse. But back early, 1600s, boats would crash land right onto the beach because they couldn't tell the land was coming. So they instituted that lighthouse out there, and I guess that helped a lot. But a lot of history down there. I really like the history part of the Outer Banks. That's where it all started. I'd probably say 1972, and we took it from there. We took a few years off. Times meant for us to just go to other places. So shortly after that, a few years later, we all migrated to Ocean City, Maryland, and that just seemed to be the place to go. You always wanted to go to Ocean City because you'd come back with a bunch of memories and you tell your friends, your neighbors, the family members that didn't go with you saying, oh, what a time it is, how awesome it is. And they're like, whoa, I got to go down there. So before you know it, every time you went to Ocean City, you saw somebody down there that you knew from back home. And it's funny because you didn't see them at home all summer long. You go to Ocean City and there they are on the boardwalk. I remember the first 3 or 4 times we'd go down on a bus. The bus left at midnight, and it left from Monessen, and basically it took us a good 12 hours to get there. So we left at midnight, we got there around noon, took a chartered bus, and we wound up at different hotels when we got down there. Some people stayed at this hotel, some people stayed at this hotel. Primarily the hotel that we would stay at was called the Spinnaker. The Spinnaker was not beachfront hotel. It was more set back off of the boardwalk, but it really didn't matter at that time. You were just in your room to sleep. I remember just going from restaurant to boardwalk to amusement park to museums, just anything to get out of the room to go see the beach and the boardwalk, because back then you only took one vacation a year. That was it. That's all you had to look forward to all year. It's hard to imagine now only going on one vacation a year. People go on multiple ones every year. But back then, people just went on one a year and it was huge, very big. You came back. You actually sent postcards back then. Sometimes you go for a week, and on day 5, day 6, you're like, oh, I got to fill out the postcards and send them out. And sometimes you beat the postcards back home. You know, you showed up before your friends actually got the postcards. I thought that was always funny. But a lot of good times down there on a boardwalk. I mean, geez, there was times whenever would go down there and would see somebody working on the boardwalk. You know, they'd be in the arcade. They'd be working as a waiter, waitress. They would be just working security, something like that. There was always something to do down there. And it was a very popular place. I mean, you know, some of my cousins worked down there. Some of my good friends worked down there at Ocean City, Maryland. But that's where we chose to go. But some of my cousins would still go back to Nags Head. You know, they'd have a timeshare down there, and my aunt would take everyone down there for 2 weeks. Usually the last week of July and the first week of August, they would go down there. We only went down there that one time. Then many years later, we went back again. I want to say it was 30 years later we went back, and it was funny going back there to see how things changed. But Ocean City was where it was at for us growing up as kids. And, you know, most of my cousins, or all of my cousins, I should say, they took a take into, I think it was Wildwood, New Jersey. They liked Wildwood, New Jersey. And some of my other cousins like Wildwood Crest. Just depends on where the area was that you liked and what all you enjoyed. You know, some of the most memorable times I've had is on the actual trip itself. I mean, on that bus trip, you're on a bus with probably, I don't know, maybe 50 to 60 other people. And, you know, mostly you knew them. Some of them you didn't, but you got to know them. And you always wanted a back seat in the bus. Always, you know, the back seat of the bus was most popular. My mom would, along with Fran, my mom would schedule the buses. She would organize everything, and she would plan out the vacation and where everyone wanted to stay. And she would do this yearly for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years maybe. And sometimes that was the best part, was going down on the bus. You know, some of my cousins would go. Some of my high school friends would go. You know, some people that I didn't know would go. But then on the way back, you got to know them through the week, and they turned out to be lifelong friends. So it was always a good time. You know, a couple moments I remember, you know, my friend Gil, he was always a blast to go down there. You know, he was always a risk taker. What a risk taker he was. He would go out in the ocean, and he would just go on a raft in the ocean and just let the tide take him wherever it would take him. And sometimes he'd be half a mile out, and I could hear the whistles blowing. I'd turn over on my blanket, and I'd be like, it got to be Gil. There's a time when I remember my dad going out there trying to save Gil. And then we had to call the lifeguards. But he always seemed to make it back safe. So that was just one little story, which was really fun. Then as we got older, you know, I got married, and then we had kids, and we wanted to start it back up again by going back to Ocean City. And if you've ever been to Ocean City, Maryland, you know, some things never change. You know, the boardwalk might change, the tram, the tram might change, the hotels might update their facade or whatever, but basically everything was the same. You know, you walk, it's like 3 or 4 mile boardwalk. The shops are the same. The taffy's the same. Maybe the rides have changed, things like that. There was always one attraction that I always enjoyed, was the dunk tank. That was probably one of my favorite things to do down there. And I'd look at that, and I'd look forward to that dunk tank all year long. Is basically there was a clown, and all he did was talk shit on you. He'd talk crap on you, and he'd make you want to pay, I don't know what it was, $5 for 3 throws, maybe 3 baseball throws to try to dunk him. And he would make fun of you as you threw it. You throw the ball and you try to dunk him. And man, I remember seeing these big guys, and he would just fire. He would just fire everybody up. So you're spending $5, $10, $20, $30 just to dunk this clown. But he got in your head because he talked so much that you couldn't knock him down. I remember it took me many years to finally knock him down because he got you riled up, and then you couldn't throw a straight ball. But back then I was playing Bronco League, Pony League, so I remember knocking him in a dunk tank. And I remember there was 3 of us one time, and I was the only one that went ahead and paid $5, had 3 pitches, and I think I hit him with the last pitch. And then I shut him up as he went underwater for a few minutes. But it was all in good fun, but man, I had a personal vendetta against him. Every year I'm going to going to dunk that clown. And I swear it was the same clown year after year. And it almost seemed like that was his job, was to get you riled up and just get you to spend money. So that was an excellent time down there. As I said before, you go down to Ocean City and sometimes you'd see a friend that you knew. Sometimes you've seen acquaintances and a friend of a friend down there. But one special moment I do remember is seeing my future wife down there, the lovely Kim. There was one time she invited me over to her apartment, and she's like, "Mark, we got this great apartment and we have this place for you. You could stay over as long as you want. You could eat, you could drink, you can go down to the beach with us. The place is yours." It was a really great time. I remember staying there 2-3 days, and my family would be like, "Where's Mark? We go on a family vacation, but where's Mark?" And I'm with the lovely Kim. Some really good times down there. And we got to know each other a little bit better, and so on and so on. And that's probably where it started a lot. And then would come back, and we were boyfriend, girlfriend for a time back in town. And, we decided to get married. And then where I'm leading to is we would all join as a family to go back down to Ocean City. So when we had children, one of our big things was to go back to Ocean City just to share the memories with them and explain to them what we went through and to show them all the spots that we went to. I mean, we used to go to a lot of spots as teenagers. The lovely Kim and I would hit a lot of hot spots down there on the beach. I mean, there was a lot of bonfires down there. There was a lot of bars. There was a lot of nightclubs back in. Nightclubs were really big. I can remember lines being probably 100 yards long just to get in. They're checking IDs. They're checking dress code. They're making sure everybody is legit walking in. And, there's sometimes you got in, sometimes you didn't. Depends how full the place was. But that was a really good time. I mean, I went down multiple times with the lovely Kim, and we just really enjoyed it. And we enjoyed each other, especially when we stayed over each other's apartments. As the years went by, the kids got older and older, and we started adding on with other family members. I'd go with the in-laws or I'd go with my family, and just seemed like the more the merrier. I mean, there were times when we'd fit everybody in one room, 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, but we had 18 people or something like that at one time. But then we branched out to 2, maybe 3 rooms. Whether it was a condo, whether it was a hotel, it didn't really matter as long as you were down there. You could remember a lot of iconic sites down there. I mean, there's just some things that just don't change. There was the Super Fresh grocery store there. There was the church over there. There was Anthony's Meat Shop. That's a very iconic place. In fact, I still have the show. And some of the DJs that we would go see down there are legendary as well. I can remember a guy named Batman, very legendary DJ back in Ocean City, Maryland. And I remember Barry Stallion, and it was Barry Streeb. They called him the Stallion. And, there was a lot of good times that he would spin the hits, and he'd do a lot of good commentary. I remember going down to those nightclubs and just enjoying myself all the time. As my kids got older, kind of branched out to different areas. And then I think we actually outgrew Ocean City, because time after time we'd go down there and we would just, have a blast. But then we wanted to turn it up a notch. So when we turned it up, we're like, hey, let's go back to the Outer Banks. So like I said earlier, 30 years later, we go back to the Outer Banks and we look at things a little bit different. Things just looked a little smaller. The houses were smaller, the stores were smaller, the beaches were smaller. Because whenever you were younger, back in 1972, and we went, everything was so much bigger on a larger scale. It was huge to you. Now you come back as an older adult and you're like, wow, this store is really small and old. So that's just a little fun to reminisce about the Outer Banks. But we soon outgrew that. There wasn't as much to do there. It was pretty secluded. But if you wanted to get away, that was a good place to get away. But if we wanted to go to a more popular area, an area of where there was a lot more people, we just wanted more rides. We wanted more entertainment. We wanted some boardwalk. We wanted some fresh scenery, things like that. So we went down to Myrtle Beach. And boy, did we have some good times down at Myrtle Beach. I mean, the weather's nicer down there. The water's warmer for sure. There's just a lot more to do down at Myrtle Beach. You know, I could always remember the road trip down to Myrtle Beach. It probably took us 12 hours, but it was well worth it. You know, Ocean City was probably 6 hours. Myrtle Beach was twice, but it was probably twice the fun. Just the water, just the activities, the jet skiing. You know, the home that we would live in down there, because you actually had houses. We didn't really live in a condo down there. We lived in an actual house. There were condos there. At some points we did stay in condos, but sometimes we stayed in houses. And those are some good times as well. Would blend up some good margaritas down there and would give it a go. I mean, those times always went fast. You know, I always say as a kid growing up, when you're on vacation, it's the fastest time of your life. You know, you wake up one day and before you know it, the day's over. In fact, I was so upset at that one time. Every time I woke up, I would just say, day's over. Because as soon as you wake up, the day flies by because you're doing stuff you love, and then the day's over. So the weeks would fly by that you're down there. We usually just stayed 1 week, but man, those were a fast 7 days. In fact, I remember trying not to go to sleep just to make the vacation last longer. In my mind, I figured if I don't go to sleep, tomorrow's never going to come. So this vacation is going to last and last. So I would try to stay up as long as I could just to make it last that much longer. But eventually I fell asleep. And eventually the vacation came to an end. But boy, did you have the memories. Yeah, the memories. Those were great back then. You know, most recently we've been trying a couple other beaches. We've gone to Virginia Beach with a lot of success there. That's a little bit further south than Ocean City, and I think the water is warmer. The air temperature is definitely warmer, and they have a boardwalk too. It's not as commercialized as Ocean City, Maryland, but you know, they still have a lot of nice things to do down there. And you know, we took the lovely Kim's parents down there with us, and they also enjoyed it for a couple years that we went. It's always nice to get back to where you've gone. This way you could see how things change and see how things progress. You know, it's very nostalgic. I think so. And it's something you're never going to forget. You know, I know some people that never seen the ocean. I remember working one job years ago, and our housekeeper's like, no, we've never been to the beach. I've never seen the ocean. So I can't even fathom that. I mean, if I took a year or two off, I would actually dream about the beach because I missed it so much. I'm like, oh my God, I need to get back there. So I would dream after dream after dream and just think about the beach constantly because it was something you never saw. You know, some of my friends that lived near the beach, they would look at me when I saw them down there. They'd go, Mark, what's wrong? You never saw water before? What's the matter with you? It's just water. Well, he actually said water. What's the matter, Mark? You never saw the water before? I'm like, no, Jeff, I don't get down there as much as you. So that was always fun. You know, there were some times where you'd go on vacation and it wasn't always great. You know, I can remember Sean getting sick, getting delirious, and I couldn't wait to get to the beach. And as soon as we got to Ocean City, he wanted to sleep by the balcony so he could look at the beach. And I do remember him getting sick. He had a fever. He might have been 2 or 3. And he's like, oh, look at all that snow on the beach. Look at that snow. I'm like, Sean, what are you talking about? That's not snow, that's sand. We had to take him to the doctors. $150 later, he's getting better and he's like, oh, this is great. I'm like, Sean, you missed half the vacation. Time to go home. So there's been a lot of incidents on vacation. I mean, I can remember, Raina passing out on the beach. My brother, Mike, put me in charge of her 1 week. And he's like, Mark, you're in charge of Raina. Make sure she's taken care of. Make sure everything's fine. If you need anything, just give me a ring. But whatever you do, just take care of her. And, I was her godfather. So, of course, I'm going to take special interest in taking care of her. I wouldn't let anything happen to her. I wouldn't let anything happen to my family. But there was one incident when I did lose track of her. She did get out of my sight, and she actually passed out on the beach and from heat exhaustion. And I dropped the ball on that one. But I did race over to her. I did try to wake her up, and I think I was one of the first ones to call 911 to get her to the hospital. So So hopefully, that doesn't happen again. But as always, there's something that always goes wrong. I mean, I can remember my niece Erica. She brought a friend with her to the Outer Banks, I believe. We were at Nag's Head, or Kill Devil Hills, or something down there, and her friend got a call that her dad had passed away. And, that was on day 2 or maybe day 3 of the vacation. And then, we had to take her to the airport, and her friend flew back to go be with her family because, they had to make final arrangements for her dad. So there was always something that happened on vacation. I mean, whether somebody was waiting, one of the kids would be waiting all week to make a move on this one girl that they thought was cute. And then they finally made a move the day before we leave. And they're like, oh, I should have started this on day 1. But no, they waited till day 6. And they finally kicked it off, had a good time, and then they had to leave. So memo to self, if you're going to pick up girls, start early in the week. So those are just some of the good times, and I totally understand the girl picking up at the beach because that's how I met lovely Kim, was picking her up at the beach and doing all kind of great things, just riding bikes, just tagging along right on the boardwalk and holding hands and visiting areas and just talking about old times and what her family did at the same place and what my family did at the same place as growing up. So a lot of good times are being had. That's what I'm mostly talking about today, is all the good times. And hopefully you'll have as many good times as we did. Oh, and here comes the lovely Kim walking into the room. Gee, I wonder what she's going to say now. Is there something that I said that wasn't correct?
I'm not sure. I, of course, overheard you talking, and I'm not sure exactly if you were talking about me.
Why wouldn't I be talking about you?
Because you never came and slept over at my place when you were down there with your family.
Wait, what?
Is that what you said?
Yeah, I was a teenager. Remember that?
I don't know what girl's place you were sleeping over, but it was not my place.
That apartment that you had back on 100th Street, I think it was, or 99th Street?
You mean when I was down there with my family?
Yeah, sure.
Who was this girl that you were sleeping over at her place? Because
you're saying it wasn't you?
No, you came down with my family and you stayed at our place.
But how about when I came
and you slept
separately?
on the couch.
Oh, I slept on the couch?
With another guy.
Wait, what? Wait. This is going south. No, please clarify. I do not remember that.
Well,
Are we talking about your sister's boyfriend?
At the time, yeah.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah.
Oh, okay. So then,
wow,
I was half right. I thought it was just you.
Unless I'm discovering something about you that I never knew.
No, of course not. Of course not. It was always with you.
That's how I remember it. If you remember something differently, then maybe it wasn't with me. So.
No, I'm pretty sure it was with you. Might have got my facts mixed up. That's hard to believe.
No, not you.
But it was some good times going down there from what I remember, regardless of whoever I was with or, my side of the family, your side of the family, together, separate, always a good time.
Yeah. And then our family.
Oh, yeah. Our family for sure. Going down when the kids were little, really had a good time. And I think the kids really enjoyed it too. And I'm hoping that they'll expand on it as well.
We need to go back there.
We need to go back is what we need to do.
Always got to go back to.
We need to go back to the scene of the crime of where it all happened. Well, thanks, Kim, for coming in and clearing that up. As usual, what are wives for? Well, that about wraps it up for this week's Right on the Mark with your host, Mark Young. See you next time.